Friday night at BC Place, the Lions host the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in just another one of those regular season games. Except it's not. Geroy Simon, number 81, the guy who used to do the Superman pose after scoring touchdowns, is having his jersey retired by the Lions. He spent 12 years of his superb record-setting career as a Lion. I'm joined by Lowell Ulrich, the longtime Province Sports football writer from his home in North Vancouver. LU, talk to me about Geroy. You have been writing football for a long time. What do you remember about this guy when he first arrived after spending the first little bit of his career with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers?
You know, you're all of a sudden making me feel really old because we're talking about a guy who I was covering when he got here and a guy who I was covering basically when he left. He came here after a real short stint from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They had no room for him. They had Milt Stegall on their team, and there was just nothing that they could do. Adam Rita brought him over, in point of fact, and Rita just said, you know what, here's an opening, go, be the best you can be, and obviously Geroy took that to heart. What impresses you, of course, is his longevity, his ability to run routes and understand how to get open into coverage, whether he could beat you deep, he could sit in zones. I mean, he can do, he had the obvious full package. And when I think back, that's probably what will strike me as being some of the, the bigger attributes that he's had over his career.
But they always said he wasn't the fastest guy, right?
True enough. I mean, there was a lot of guys that burned by him, but he could beat you deep, especially early on in his career. If you think about the record breaker that actually got him to set the record a couple of years ago, it was against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and it was when he blew by a receiver. Now, that might have been his best pass reception. He may not have had a deeper ball ever since that, and that was a couple of years ago. But he did have good enough speed, and he was, like I say, a very smart runner too.
Watching him play for over a decade and watching him interact with people, whether it was at training camp or at games, what was it about his personality that made Geroy such a fan favorite? Or maybe that's even unfair. Basically, he became an icon here. This is not easy to do in a league where you don't know where a guy's going to be from one year to the next.
Well, I think what really impressed you was he wasn't really, an overt sense of me, a lot of bravado. It was sort of like, here I am, or he would say this to players, here I am, you got questions, I'm here, come on and talk to me. I'm not going to be overbearing about myself. I'm here. I'll do my job. I think I got to a point of a little bit of frustration sometimes, maybe because not everybody asked him, but no, a lot of players certainly gravitated to who he was and what he was able to offer. And I think it was that which sort of appealed to people, is that, there was no community event that I could ever think where he really turned it down. He'd do it. He'd smile. Sometimes he'd, kind of grimace a little bit. He'd certainly grimace when he got dumb questions from media people, like a lot of athletes do. You can't, you certainly can expect that. But, and at the end, he did it all. I mean, he's doing it all this week in terms of public appearances and doing something for a Lions team that he has no connection to right now. So you got to admire the fact that he gets it. He understands football. He understands the business of football and knows what it takes in order to be successful in all facets.
LU, about 3 years ago, I had the good fortune of being able to golf with Geroy. It was at a charity tournament, and the organizer said, guess what, you're golfing with Geroy and you're going to be in Geroy's cart. And I was thrilled. So I got to spend about, 4 to 5 hours with Geroy, and it was, that was pretty fortunate to be able to have that kind of concentrated time where he wasn't even bothered by other people. And during those few hours, I pretty much grilled him. Hopefully didn't give him too many questions that he's sick of hearing, but I asked him a lot about family, for instance, and Geroy, of course, from Pennsylvania, has a son there. I don't know how old he is now. He may have graduated from high school, but Geroy was sort of an absent or long distance father who had had grown up away from this kid, but had made a concerted effort over the years to become a better father. I was really, I have to say, I was very intrigued by Giroy's personality. He wasn't like razzle-dazzle with me. He certainly wasn't like an Ocho Cinco or even like a Manny Arsenault. He was a bit more understated, but I thought he was a really sensitive guy. And you know I love the sensitive guys, LU.
Yeah. I mean, so in other words, you threw the club and he didn't when you were golfing, number one. That was I would pay ticket. I would buy tickets to see that. Gervon is one of his son's name. He's at West Point in college right now, so he's starting off on a football career there as well. But yeah, a good sense of family, a good sense of a community. You know, involved himself in Cloverdale Minor football. Got a lot of his teammates involved in coaching in that association, which I think is a bit of a legacy too. And you know what? What's going to be really interesting to see going forward is two things. One, where's he going in the future he wants to be a general manager. He said to me this week, he says, I'd like to be a team president. So he's clearly got designs in something other than, player personnel issues. He wants to be or shoot higher than that. And the other thing that strikes me is, who's going to beat that all-time receiving yardage record? Because there's nobody within miles of him. I mean, I think I don't even know where the next active receiving yardage leader is on the scale. Nick Lewis, I suppose, would probably be it. And he's pretty much near the end of his career with the Stampeders. So that record of 16,000 plus, that's the one I'm saying, man, that one's going to be a hard one to see who can knock it off. So a couple things there with Giroy in terms of what he's done, who's going to beat him, and where he's going from here.
Well, you know, you mentioned longevity right off the top of this chat today, and that's the thing that's going to stop guys from breaking Giroy's record. Although, ironically, it was pretty funny when he was going. I believe it was when he was going into his last season with the Lions, where you wrote a story about sort of his incredible fitness for a man his age, for a man who'd been through the beatings that a football player goes through. And I think maybe, LU, you jinxed him a little bit by writing that story, because that was sort of the beginning of the end, and he actually started to get injured more or less for the first time in his career. I wanted to ask you one more thing. The Lions have retired 8 jerseys. When you look back, who's your favorite of those 8 retired jerseys?
Oh, man.
Sorry.
There's 8 jerseys, and you want me to pick one of those. Well, you know what? I guess I'm going to say the guy that we had a chat about not so long back, I think probably resonates for a lot of people. I'm no different. When you spend 25 years as a kicker, when you become pro football's all-time leading scorer, when you fight rather the number of personal demons that he's had to from mostly medical now, you got to look at Louis Pasaglia for me, because that guy, I think, to a lot of people, still embodies everything that the BC Lions have been and are about. And so if I were to pick one, and thanks very much for asking, I'd go with Louis.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Giroy being honored on Friday night. It's, of course, well-deserved. And as for you, Lowell, thanks very much for joining us. Look to everything Lowell is doing this week at provincesports.com. Of course, Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. he has his usual pregame live chat, so be there. And thanks again, LU.
Hey, my pleasure.